Welcome to the NCS4 Online Technology Forum series, where we review people, processes, and products by partnering with leading technology experts and how we can leverage that technology for an operational community. Thank you for joining us today. I'm your moderator, Michael Finley. Today's topic is leveraging government funding to improve security in education. This is sponsored by Stanley Security. Before we get started, I'd like to quickly go over a few platform functions. We will not be using the hand-raising function, but we will be taking questions for our panel today. For the desktop and laptop users, the question function is on the right-hand side of your screen. And for smartphone users, the question function is at the bottom of your screen. Please ask questions of the panel. We will break periodically to review these questions with the panel, and hopefully we can get to all of them before we end. I would like to introduce our panel for today's forum. Unfortunately, Congressman Guy Reschenthaler from the 14th District of Pennsylvania is unable to join us. Ironically, because he is on the floor today discussing one of the very things we're going to be talking about today. He did, however, prepare a statement, and I would like to pass that along. This is from Congressman Guy Reschenthaler from the 14th District in Pennsylvania. Hello all, and welcome to the NCS4 webinar, Leveraging Government Funding to Improve Safety in Education. I am disappointed that I cannot be with you today, but pressing matters on the House floor with discussion and hopefully passing of the Alyssas Act, which further funds safety in education, demands my attendance and attention on the floor. I wish you all well in your pursuit of the funding necessary to open and keep open your facilities in a safe and secure fashion. The forum promises to be very informative. I am sorry I cannot be in attendance, and I look forward to joining you in the future at NCS4. And we certainly wish Congressman Reschenthaler good luck in the passing of this act. Now, I would like to have the panelists introduce themselves. First, we'd like to start with Mike. Mike, if you will, please let everybody know who you are and where you're from.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michael. So my name's Mike Ivanish. I'm the manager of school safety and security for North Allegheny School District in the North Hills of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We have a 12-building school district with roughly 8,600 students, 1,200 staff, and we cover about 46 square miles of physical land, which is a fairly good-sized suburban school district. And we're facing all the challenges anybody would expect we're facing right now in this COVID environment. So we'll get to talk about a lot of that coming up here, but I'm pleased to be a part of the panel, and I look forward to today.
Thank you for joining us, Mike. And now I'd like to turn it over for Joseph Wahl. Joe's going to introduce himself and kick off the program.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Mike Ivanish, for being here. My name is Joe Wahl. I'm Regional Sales Manager for Stanley Convergence Security Solutions. My background in security is a long road. I've been a contract player with NSA. I have been in several different positions of authority. My favorite is the one that I hold now. I'm very blessed to be an executive with Stanley, a division of Stanley Black & Decker, and I'm happy to be here with you today. In addition to my duties as Regional Sales Manager, I am also the National Lead for Interoperability Communications. And I'm also kind of a resident expert on the CARES Act and the Alyssas Act, which is being negotiated through Congress. I want to talk a little bit about the CARES Act and K-12. That's where we'll start. There are two sides to the CARES Act and K-12. First is called the GEARS Act, which is the GEARS Education Emergency Relief. And the other side of it is ESSER, which is the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief. The GEARS funding is focused on distance learning, administrative cost training, personnel associated with addressing the needs directly from COVID-19. This funding was distributed through the state departments of education. Each state came up with their own process and procedure and their own deadline. Each of the states has an individual deadline, and as part and parcel to our presentation here, there is support documentation available at the end that will address the deadlines per state. There are actually two deadlines though. Each one is from the state, and then there is a secondary deadline of October 31st, 2020. The first deadlines are funded in August, September, and October. And then the October 31st deadline is funded in November, December, and January 2021. The ESSER, or the GEARS funding, as I said, is focused on the administrative costs. The ESSER funding for products and procedures of getting schools open and keeping them open in a safe and secure fashion during the COVID-19 pandemic, or in a way that helps to offset the limitations from the COVID-19 pandemic. Both funding mechanisms are available to not only public, but private, parochial, and charter schools based upon their Title I enrollment numbers. As we talked about, each state has developed deadlines. Most states have not been very forthcoming with notification of this funding, as any unspent monies in this act go back into the individual state treasuries. Private, parochial, and charter schools must claim their funding through what's called a local educational authority, and that differs from state to state and often from region to region. In Pennsylvania, we have what's called intermediate units that serve regionally public, private, parochial, and charter schools. The funding for all is based upon Title I enrollment figures. So if your individual K-12 school is a Title I school, meaning that you follow federal guidelines, you are entitled to this funding. The next portion of the CARES Act that I'd like to talk about is Section 18004 of the CARES Act, which is for higher education. Again, this segment or this section is divided into two parts. The first is an overall allocation that is assigned by the Department of Education, and it's based on a variety of different factors, but most notably enrollment. Exactly 1/2 of the overall allocation is designated for student assistance, distance or remote instruction, and administrative costs, which training, personnel, and etc. The other half is designed for appliances, applications, and processes for ensuring safety and security that's applicable not only for COVID-19, but for any and all emergent or pandemic situations. Let's face it, right now, 2020 has been one of the most trying times in our history. We have faced pandemic. We have faced civil unrest like we haven't seen in many decades. And we're seeing a second influx of COVID-19, and we will have additional civil unrest based upon the political nature of what's going on in today's society. Largely, depending upon when the COVID-19 vaccine is developed, we may yet see another increase in COVID cases. That being the case, one needs to be judicious and one needs to plan very well the spending of these federal funds in order to combat COVID, in order to make things safe and secure in their individual facilities. Now, let's talk about the CARES Act itself. It was written with a great deal of forethought. And the reason I say that is because every facility and institution is different. Harvard is different from the University of Southern Mississippi. Okay, in K to 12, North Allegheny is separate from Seminole County schools. Each one has individual challenges and pain points that they have to address. The law and the CARES Act was written ambiguously in order to give flexibility and those in authority the ability to determine what is important and what should be prioritized as important for the reopening and the ability to stay open in a safe and secure fashion. The applicable uses of funding under Section 18004, just as under the Alyssas Act, is access control systems, because you have to determine who is coming and going from your facility. Emergency signaling systems, thermal imaging, visitor management systems, video surveillance to be able to see common areas where people are gathering, interoperability communications, certainly water purification and air purification and sanitary supplies and disinfectants. Each individual facility is different. Each individual priority system for each individual institution is going to be different. Things that we need to keep in mind. Again, every institution is different. The monies that are available as a federal grant for emergency purposes, the regular processes for purchasing, unless specifically designated by state law, do not apply. Each institution has the flexibility and the authority to determine what is best for their own situations. From a management standpoint, we strongly recommend that every individual institution, whether they be K to 12 or higher education, try and access the full allocation and work the overall plan for the institution into the funding. The great thing about CARES is that you, everybody on this call, has the ability to impact the safety and security of your facilities, not just COVID-19, not just through weather emergencies, not just through civil unrest, but for the foreseeable future in virtually any and all emergency or critical situations. This funding is something that is definitely unprecedented. And in all likelihood, none of us will see this again in our lifetime. With that in mind, I'd like to talk about the HEALS Act. The HEALS Act is the second stimulus that is coming through the Congress. The first stimulus package was worth roughly $100 billion. And there is a lot of funding available for K to 12 and higher education. And when I say higher education, I'm not just talking about colleges and universities. I'm talking about community colleges. I'm talking about junior colleges. I'm talking about dance and barber schools. The monies are allocated based upon your enrollment and if you are a federally recognized institution. The HEALS Act, no matter what version you look at, the final version that is discussed today is worth $228 billion. So there's another very large influx of monies that is going to be made available for investment into our educational institutions. I've pretty much gone over that part of it. Originally, we thought it was going to be 150 billion, but the latest version that came out last night was 228 billion. Are there any questions at this point?
Yeah, I would like to remind everybody to please use the question feature if you would have questions for the panelists. And again, for desktop and laptop users, the question feature is featured on the right side of your screen. And for smartphone users, the question feature is at the bottom of your screen. And Joe, we do have one. How would you get the best value for the funding?
Well, I really think that the smartest thing, and you know, everybody on here that is in charge of a facility has in their own mind what they would like to do long term. And most everybody has what I would consider to be a long-term plan. I think that when you start talking about implementing any type of situation, you have to look at what the long-term effects are going to be. You have to look at impacting the safety and security, whether it be with PPE, whether it be with water purification, whether it be with integrated solutions. You need to be able to impact the greatest number of people over the longest period of time. So by getting the biggest bang for the buck, I would say that you have your plan and you back as much money into that plan as you can right now.
Okay, Joe, another question is there a different set of deadlines for the HEALS Act?
Well, we don't know that yet. We believe that the first deadlines, and we believe that it's going to be set up similarly. K-12 is going to have state deadlines. And then there will be a secondary funding that will go through the federal government.
Okay.
As far as Section 18004, which addresses higher education, we believe that there will be one deadline. We don't know when that will be, but I would imagine it's going to be sometime in June or July.
Okay. Our next question is, are career and vocational high schools eligible for this funding?
Yes. Again, when you talk about vocational technical schools, you talk about career schools, you're talking about basically charter schools, parochial schools, or private schools. They have funding available through the local educational authority. Now, again, in Pennsylvania, that is operated as what's called an intermediate unit. In Maryland, for example, you have county Department of Educations. You know, some of the school districts are operated on a county basis and not on just a local basis, and they legislate as a local educational authority.
And our next question, are there key phrases that need to be used for particular items to receive the funding?
There's really not key phrases. I will guard everybody that keep track of your expenditures and make sure that you can align them with the goals that are original to the situation. In other words, make sure that you can account and you can connect to opening the schools in a safe and secure fashion. Key phrases, you know, this is an entitlement. If you're a Title I school, it's not that you're applying like a regular grant application. You are actually submitting a claim, as it were, because this money is entitled to you based on your enrollment. So there's really not a key phrase. I mean, if I am applying for the Alyssas Act, I wouldn't apply for 2,700 laptops because that was supposed to be taken care of during the GEARS funding aspect. There again, I wouldn't, you know, put a bunch of computer equipment in the ESSER side unless it is addressing the safety and security need.
Okay, we have 3 questions and they're all general the same thing, and I'll try to sum up. These funds are eligible for childcare, early start, Head Start, daycares, after-hour school programs, private preschools, and charter elementaries. So I know it's a big group. Are there any of those excluded, or are they all included?
Well, therein lies the rub. When you start getting into for-profit childcare centers, it's a little bit different than dealing with private and parochial schools. When you're dealing with private and parochial schools, again, I will send you back to the local educational authority. You can go through Health and Human Services and try and apply for regular health care or regular child care centers.
Okay, one more. What is the biggest challenges that for applying for this funding?
Knowing about it. And understand that each individual state is in a catch-22. The HEALS Act is going to solve a lot of that, but during the CARES Act, the states were distributed this money through their departments of education, and whatever monies goes unspent goes into the general treasury of each individual state. Well, forgive me, but if I'm the governor of a state, certainly I want some monies to go out, but anything that's unclaimed, I'm certainly going to want to be able to take care of my budgetary woes. HEALS Act kind of softens that blow a little bit. So the biggest problem that we've had, and we had this specifically in Pennsylvania, where school districts had about 5 days to put in their allocation requests for the first wave of funding. And the states found out where they wanted to be. But the biggest thing is, and we've worked very hard with my team at Stanley and our regional sales managers across the country have reached out diligently and tirelessly to try and get information into the hands of superintendents, business managers, facilities coordinators, and IT directors. And the biggest thing that we heard was, well, we've already spent that money, but they spent the GEARS fund. There's two sides to this. And very few people knew about the ESSER side, as Mr. Vanish could attest to.
Okay, and we'll get to him. We got a few more questions. One is, I understand the CARES Act, but how do I tap into the funding process?
Well, the funding process, and Michael, I have given NCS4 information on the allocations for 18004 and for each individual state. In addition to that, there are forms available for the United States Department of Education that are on the U.S. Education website that bypass the state after the state deadlines are gone. And what would happen is each individual school district that applies for that through the Department of Education, that allocation will be taken out directly from the state.
Okay, and as a reminder to everyone, a few days from now, this presentation will be available on our website along with the resources that Joe was talking about. One more question. As an individual school, where do we go to find out what dollar amount is available for my school?
Well, each school is different. Each state is different. You need to reach out to your local representative for the State Department of Education. Okay, and it is based solely on the per capita costs that are associated with the Title I enrollment figures in your particular school district. Now, okay, Michael, I will offer my benefit and Stanley's benefit of our experience. And, I can forward my contact information if anybody wants to have a conversation with regards to consultation on the CARES Act, whether it be me or one of my colleagues across the country, depending on what area it is. But our people are very well schooled in the CARES Act. And after it passes, hopefully today, they will be very well schooled in the HEALS Act as well.
Okay. We've talked about the CARES Act and the HEALS Act, and now we want to switch gears a little bit and go to Mike Evanish. Now, Mike is he'll tell you, but we're going to go into the implementation of how he implemented this CARES Act at his school district. So, Mike, we'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Michael. Just advancing this slide here, and it's been a little bit tricky on me, but.
Mike, you might be muted here.
There
you are.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think I'm muted. I was just, for some reason, I wasn't being able to advance the slide. I don't know, after that one was entered, it wasn't advancing now on me, so.
Mike, do you want me to help you and enter? There you go.
Yep. Okay, so just to follow up on what Joe said, or actually expand. So Joe went through the basics of what the CARES Act allowed for, and I'm going to get into just some of the things that kind of the pointy end of the stick, so to speak, that we did as a school district under both of the different funding pots. So as under the GEARS monies for distance learning, to basically help schools, teach remotely, if you will. We capitalized on that, and we used a lot of that money for purchasing equipment, Juno towers, which are, amplified microphone systems that allow individual classroom teachers to protect their voice. We purchased some additional cabling and microphones, webcams, if you will. So without getting into the specific dollar amount, we use the lion's share of the GEARS Act to prepare our individual classroom teachers to actually project their lesson plan to their students at home. So we adopted a hybrid model where we have two cohorts. We have one cohort in school Monday and Tuesdays and home Thursday and Friday, and then flip-flop at one cohort in school Thursday and Friday, home Monday and Tuesday. What we're doing is a district that's a little more innovative, and hopefully, and actually has been well received and prompted by a lot of feedback we got over the summer when we sent out a survey. We actually got a lot of suggestions that we try to do more what they call synchronous learning. So instead of just posting things on a Blackboard platform online, or basically shelving things on the Blackboard so that students and parents could pick it off and work on their own, we were told they'd really like to see us have live feeds of the actual real-time instruction going on, fed into each student's home. So we bid on that, and it was a pretty big lift. And as Joe made mention of, one of the difficulties of the CARES Act was the short implementation timeframe. And I'll talk a little bit more about some of the hurdles we had to overcome in the next slide. But so far, we're very successful. We've gotten a lot of good feedback through board meetings, through our online forums. That 3 weeks into it, we started school on Tuesday, September 8th. So 3 weeks into it, we're up and running pretty well. A couple bumps and bruises along the way, that nothing we haven't been able to overcome. And we're projecting learning 2 days a week into the off cohort classrooms, again, via all this equipment we purchased. As far as the ESSER part of the funding, one of the big ticket items we purchased was electrostatic sprayers, which basically mists a viral killing spray into the classrooms and onto touchable surfaces. We do that every night, but we also do it in a kind of a more of a deep cleaning fashion on Wednesdays, where we ask all the students and custodians to kind of pre-prepare at 3 o'clock on Tuesday when classroom shut down. We ask them to get everything off their desktop, everything out of the way, to really basically get kind of all the nooks and crannies, if you will, and do a really deep cleaning Wednesday night. But we have a lot of dedicated custodians going through each space every night, each classroom, and that equipment is pretty pricey. That would not have been available without the help of the CARES Act. And I think it harkens back to something Joe talked about, our partnership with Stanley and our ability to have created some strategic planning beforehand really helped us leverage this money quickly and efficiently, and making sure we were hitting a target that made sense for us as a district, and not just what might be fashionable or what might, make sense to another school district. We actually hit some of the targets that our constituency, our community, our educated population, if you will, told us was important to them, and we try to target those items specifically. We also did a lot of work with the filtration units. We installed MERV 13, which just basically means minimum efficiency reporting value. All it means is that it filters a smaller particle and tries to capture viral, microbes in the air. And we also are looking at a lot of future things, such as interoperability with communications. That's something we've been working with Stanley right from the beginning. Anybody that's worked in emergency response, even in a capacity in a school district environment, knows that two-way radios don't always talk to each other. What you have programmed into your radio to be a para or a teacher in a school district environment, just so buses could talk to the home office type thing in a school usage example, they won't always, and they usually don't talk to emergency responders radio. So God forbid, if there is a significant event, an emergency response that needs to be handled by our school district, we want to make sure that we can talk to our 3 cognizant police departments, and we can make sure we're all working together on that response. Right now, we can do that to a degree, but even with our best intentions, there are some limitations in those abilities. And that's one of the things we've been working with, partnering with Stanley to look at ways to close those gaps as these and other monies become available. And just lastly, we have Alyssas Law. Alyssas Law was a Florida state law that was grown out of Parkland and the tragedy that was experienced there. It's not yet a federal law, but it very likely will become a federal law. And basically, in short order, what it requires is that school districts have mobile panic buttons given to all of the classroom teachers. So if something were to happen that they needed to immediately alert local law enforcement to an emergency via 911, they can put out that dispatch and that alert by their mobile. It's basically a fob kind of system, and that they're all the teachers and the admin and the students, in the school district are all equipped with that technology. So it's kind of one of the big picture interoperable solutions that, we at North Allegheny and certainly Stanley is kind of trying to suggest and prompt through the, leverage of these kind of monies that school districts start moving toward in the future.
And Mike, let me chime in there that Alyssas Law is not only going to be applicable to K-12. There is a strong movement congressionally to put this in every classroom, whether it be K-12 or higher learning, because there are there are critical incidents that have happened not only in the K-12 space, but in higher education, where emergency notification and interoperability in communications, being able to merge not just the ability to have panic buttons, but be able to share video and those things, video data and communications and two-way radio and cellular with first responders and all the stakeholders involved in a situation is pretty important at this point.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Joe. And just like I said, advancing to the next slide and the other points of discussion, I'll just run through and then I'll go back and touch on each one for a minute or so. So some of the things we had to wrestle with in making sure we made good decisions and we leveraged this money toward the proper uses was, first one, disposition. So even knowing about it, like Joe said, knowing that there's money available and knowing where to go get it and how to apply for it is more than half of the ballgame. So, Joe was instrumental in helping me stay informed right from the beginning. He was the first one that told me that it was available, and he helped work through the process of how we applied for it, where we looked to see how much specifically as a district we were entitled to and whatnot. So very, very helpful in making sure we stayed on task and got this whole initiative, off the ground. Allocation, again, there were definitely some debates, as there should be within the executive council and amongst our board. One thing specifically, and Joe will attest to this, Joe put together very quickly a very professional and detailed proposal to possibly purchase some thermal imaging equipment for all our district entry points and access points. Because the state law in Pennsylvania didn't require that, it was a good idea, but we made the joint decision as a board and as an executive council that the money could probably be just a little bit better spent on some other things. So we kind of stepped it down a little bit, albeit, but we did purchase some temporal thermometers and some equipment like that that we placed at our sports venues and gave to our athletic director to use for practices and sporting events. So, those debates were essential, but they were definitely, done with a lot of intent and done with the idea of serving the district and keeping our school population as safe as possible.
Yeah, now with the HEALS Act, Mike, we're going to have another discussion, right?
Well, there you go. Absolutely. And all kidding aside, that's part of this. Hey, couldn't be a better segue, Joe. Goes into process. The process is, if the process isn't strategic and long reaching and 3 to 5 years out in nature, it's really not a good process, in my opinion. If you're not working with a solid partner and they're not giving you good feedback, and again, in the case with Stanley, Joe came with one proposal, our board made a, educated and executive decision to kind of change it a little bit. Joe came with a modified proposal. We put some of that stuff aside for hopefully to be purchased in the future. But that's the nature of a good, interactive, positive partnership. And then as far as procedure, like I said, we purchased the equipment. We were able to stage it and get it implemented very quickly. And like I said, I think we've been, this is a transparent comment because we share this information publicly on our website. We actually have had a small handful of COVID cases since the school year began 3 weeks ago, but we've contact traced very successfully. We worked as directed with our county health department and our state health department. We have returned people from COVID isolation back to work and back to the classroom, both students and staff alike. So I think that's important to mention. What have we done and what's the outcome with all these monies that we spent? Our outcome is actually very positive. We're looking forward to being able to keep school open indefinitely as we move forward. And we've shown ourselves that even with a couple bumps and bruises and some jabs having been, thrown at us, we're rolling and we're educating. So I think that's something to be proud of and to make note of. Points of importance missed. I think this gets back to what Joe was saying. It's not like there aren't some things we still want to buy and we still want to implement, and we're always reinventing. But like I said, with a good partnership in place and with hopefully more monies available, we will tackle some of those outstanding items as we move forward. So I think at that point, I'll probably, hopefully we did get some good questions, and I want to turn it back. But did you have some things to add on that note, or?
Yeah, I think it's important. And again, I've hit on this once before. Having a plan is vital. There were so many things that happened to put people on roller skates with COVID-19. A lot of people did reactionary things. When you have a strategic plan in place for life safety and security, this becomes second nature. You already have the priorities in place. Being able to do that, whether you're dealing at University of Southern Mississippi with your college campus, or you're dealing with Harvard, you're dealing with USC, you're dealing with North Allegheny, you're dealing with Topeka, West Kansas, you're dealing in New Orleans, you're dealing with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Okay, any of these entities, you have different pain points, but to have a strategic plan in place and be able to impact your facility for the longest period of time through the CARES Act and through HEALS Act is an optimum situation. And we stand ready to help in any way. During this presentation, we talked about a lot of things that Stanley does. And we've talked about a lot of things that Stanley does not do. We're not a water purification vendor. We're not an air purification vendor, but we counsel, and I think Mike alluded to this, that we counsel our clients very judiciously, and we help them make quality decisions.
So, this kind of segues right into a question that we had of once funded, what steps do you make sure that your plan is strategic and sustainable over the next 3 to 5 years?
So, I mean, I can take that. I think, like I said, I think we continue to, keep our focus forward. And like I said a minute ago, to close up the previous section, I think we make sure that our initial assumptions were solid and that, they're borne out in truth from, results after you put them into play and then you see where things are going. But that includes partnership. And like I said, I can't, in my position, I can never be really truthfully the be all and end all for the technical expertise. I can know what gaps we have to fill. I can know what, problems I want to resolve, and I can have an idea of some of the technologies that are out there. But when it comes to really making a 6 or 7 figure purchase decision, for instance, I'm going to make sure I have a technical expert that can say, hey, Mike, this is the latest and greatest. This is actually not the latest and greatest, but the tried and true is probably better than the latest and greatest. Those kind of recommendations are invaluable, and they really come from, a strong team and a strong partnership with, like I said, like some folks like Joe. I mean, I wouldn't want to be making those decisions myself because there's just too many people out there, too many good products, and also just too many, there's enough sales pitches to go around, most of them good, some of them, serving a certain agenda, but at the same time, I can't comb all through those without some assistance from somebody I trust. And that's kind of how I keep our school district out of trouble, is having a good give and take with these partnerships and making sure that I actually listen and I take those good recommendations up to my board and, keep that process turning like a wheel, always keeping that loop perpetual.
Okay. And again, I want to encourage anyone that has a question for either of our panelists, please use the question feature for laptop and desktop users. It's on the right-hand side. For smartphone users, it's at the bottom of your screen. Another question came in: is this grant money a reimbursement process? So we have to spend the money first, then submit the invoice for reimbursement, or do you apply for the funding to see what you can afford to do?
Again, it's not an application. It's claiming funds that are applicable based upon the Title I or for your enrollment figures when you're talking about Section 18004. The ability is there if school districts and colleges and universities want to expend the money and then go after their claim. They're more than welcome to do that. The monies will be there. There is really no reason for school districts nor 18004 higher education institutions to think that they're going to be turned down for this money. This is an entitlement.
Okay, another question asks for elaboration on Alyssas Act.
Okay, I'll take that. Alyssas Act is a, down in Florida in Parkland High School, there was a very, very tragic and deadly shooting. Young lady named Alyssa, her parents started a foundation and started to bring to light the tragedy that happened to the 17 children in Parkland that were shot during that onslaught. That has grown. It has, we've seen so many different active shooter situations, whether it be Columbine, whether it be Sandy Hook, whether it be Parkland, and even in public venues such as Las Vegas. Okay, we've seen so many of these things. Well, we all want to keep our kids safe. And in the education space, the only way kids are really going to adequately learn is if they feel safe. When you have Alyssa's Law in place, Alyssa's Law calls for the emergency signaling of first responders directly to the classroom. In our situation at Stanley, we work with school districts across the country to offer not only that panic button, but we go a step further with interoperability communications, which actually turns a cell phone into a microphone and a camera that first responders can actually see what's going on inside the classroom. So Alyssa's law is necessary. We've seen shootings on college campuses. We've seen shootings on high school campuses. Look, in Pittsburgh just several weeks ago, we saw a shooting in a middle school. We've seen people get stabbed. Okay, so we want to connect. We want to make those classrooms, those classroom teachers, we want to give them the ability to connect with first responders. And again, you know, I have 2 kids. I know Mike's got kids. We all have kids. And the bottom line is we want them to be safe when they go to school. There's so many things out in the world right now that are unsure. We talk about COVID-19. We talk about the civil unrest that's going on. We talk about just the climate that's out there in society today. We want education to be a safe haven for our kids. That is the best way for us to educate. That is the best way for our kids to excel. And it is the best way for us to be active as community leaders. And every parent's a community leader. I am very, very happy that the federal government has taken this up. Alyssa's law has been adopted by 9 different, I think it's up to 12 different states right now. The only problem is with Alyssa's law, it's what I call an unfunded mandate or underfunded mandate, because they've allowed for the law to go into place, but they've offered very little money to implement these communications apparatus in each of the classrooms. That's why the CARES Act and the HEALS Act is so important, not just for K-12, but for higher education as well. We have the ability as leaders, not just at Stanley, but Michael, you at University of Southern Mississippi, my friend Sean Ellis at the University of Pittsburgh, you know, people all over the country, whether it be in an education situation or public domain like the Pittsburgh Pirates or the Pittsburgh Steelers, as you can probably tell, I'm from Pittsburgh. Those people have the ability. We have the ability to take a stand and act. Look, you're not going to eliminate all violent or critical incident, but being able to react to a critical incident, whether it be a pandemic, whether it be a weather emergency, or whether it be any other critical incident, being able to react quickly and decisively is paramount to us surviving. It's paramount to us minimizing the damages that can happen from somebody with a twisted view.
So we have one other question about the Alyssa's law, and I actually was thinking the same thing. These fobs or these panic buttons that can be used by the teachers, are they out of reach of the students themselves?
Well, here's the thing, and Mike, I can take this if you don't mind. You know, everybody has a smartphone these days. Everybody. I don't even think they make more, but everybody has a smartphone. Having that panic button capability, that one touch on the screen of a smartphone, being able to share that information, being able to share that view, because it actually takes the camera from the smartphone and makes that part and parcel to the emergency response. It also takes the microphone and connects them directly with first responders. Wow, look how far we've come in technology. And this is why we talk about a 2, a 5, and a 10-year plan for life safety and security. The plan's going to change, but you have to have a starting point. You have to have that partnership that Mike and I have, and that I'm fortunate to have with some other of my clients. You have to have, more than one person deciding what's going to happen. You have to take into account the stakeholders that are involved across the spectrum. You have to find out what the pain points are and what the potential pain points are. I know that I've gotten a little off center here, but the process is not very difficult to do. We just have to open ourselves up, and we need to have, my favorite word in the world is collaboration. I use it with my sales team. I use it with my colleagues as RSMs who I'm blessed to work with at Stanley. We all feed off one another. We have great ideas. We share that with our clients. There are RSMs across the country that I've sat in meetings with their clients. There are RSMs that have come that have a different set of expertise that I've brought into meetings with my clients. Collaboration is huge. And Michael, you guys are the experts in collaboration and what you do. You look at what NCS4 does for your constituency. It's amazing. You are bringing to your constituency solid information. You're bringing in ideas. You're bringing in processes and procedures that they need to know, that hopefully they can take one thing, implement it in their own plan, kind of like the CARES Act.
Yes. Just real quick, a follow-up question for that. Is Alyssas law inclusive of the communications interoperability under the same Alyssas law? So I think is it just pertaining to communications interoperability?
Well, Alyssas law has emergency signaling from the classroom. We take it to a little bit longer, or we take it out a little bit more. Not only having the signaling, but having the two-way communication between two-way radios, cellular devices, having, with first responders, having the ability to use drone video footage, okay, body cams, okay, so being able to work in, again, my favorite word, collaboration, even when you're talking about communities, if they're part of a bigger network, you have the ability to access cameras on somebody else's building that's part of the network. So
if I could just throw in, I think a key point on, so maybe to add a little bit of illustration of that, but it specifically, as Joe was kind of dissecting that there. So look at two different ways of doing it. Having either a handheld fob that the teacher has that signals the police and lets them know, like in our specific situation, we have 3 different jurisdictions. So that signal will go to either one of 3 if it's specialized to where, the school is actually located within a jurisdiction, or it'll go to all 3. So our expected response time is actually very good because we have 3 excellent, police departments that we form great partnerships with. But even in the best circumstances, say you have somewhere on the very best end, a 2 to 2.5 minute to maybe 5-minute response that officer or officers are actually going to be boots on the ground at your school. If you do it how Joe's saying, though, with the smartphone signaling and a camera and a microphone in real time, being able to upload an incident report or a status report or a roster or the names and places of students that are being held or are unaccounted for. Now those police officers know where to go, what they're expecting, one entrance to avoid or to actually go into, and things such as that. It's a big game changer difference than just letting the police know that you have an active shooter walking the halls of your 28,000 square foot school building. So
And,
there's
you know,
a difference between
and Mike,
leveraging technology and not really strategically leveraging technology in a way that cohesively makes sense. Those are two different situations.
and you know, Mike and Michael, when you talk about these different situations, I'll take, for example, Heinz Field or PNC Park here in Pittsburgh. You have the abilities to access, you know, thermal imaging for safe viewing of any sporting event. You have the ability to do visitor management, to be able to you know, actually screen people that are coming into your facilities. You have the ability to have interoperability communications. You have the ability to have emergency, you know, mass notification, if you will. Okay. You have the ability through the CARES Act to access disinfectants and PPE for your critical personnel. This is a great act. And I know that we've gotten a little off the beaten path talking about Alyssas law, which isn't federal law yet, but it will be shortly. We're very confident that with, you know, I know that they're dealing with the HEALS Act now, and then there's a big Supreme Court battle that's going to take place. But shortly thereafter, you're going to see Alyssas law as a federal mandate. So, you know, everything that we've talked about is going to be made possible either through the CARES Act or the HEALS Act. And again, you're dealing with not just K-12, not just you know, higher education, but you're talking about governmental entities. You're talking about county entities. So it's all good stuff.
In about 30 seconds or less, let's do a quick review if we can. So the first thing they need to do is contact their state representative. Is that correct?
Their state, if you're K-12, you contact your state education representative. Okay. If you are higher education, you have a representative that is assigned to you from the United States Department of Education, and you deal with that person.
Okay. Then you want to create a strategic and a sustainable plan. And then you want to partner with a solutions provider like Stanley Security and then implement. Does that sum it up?
Yes. And
Okay.
you need to select very carefully.
Yes. Yes. Well,
and you know, collaboration.
Collaborate. I think that's our takeaway for today. Well, Joseph Wahl, Mike Evanish, I want to thank you both for your presentation today. And for our audience out there, we want to thank you. I want to remind everybody that the NCS4 National Sports Safety and Security Conference and Exhibition is coming up. It will be virtual. It's going to be October 12th through the 14th. We're going to have numerous discussions and forums, and by registering, you can actually access these discussions and forums for up to a year. There's a group rate that just got announced today. For more information, if you go to ncs4.usm.edu/conference, all the information is there. So again, thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Mike, for your presentation.
I wanted to thank NCS4 for having us today. It's been a great hour.
Yeah, I second that. Thank you very much, Michael, for moderating and for having us as well. So thank you very much. You have a good day and thank you.
Thank you. And just a reminder, this recording of this presentation will be available on our website at ncs4.usm.edu/events/webinar. So thank you very much.